Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
The ARL GT Trophy started way back in 2021 as a place for GT enthusiasts on iRacing to race some of the best cars and circuits in the world with the benefit of alternative race formats, driver class divisions, stewarding and much more. Tonight we embark on Season 6 of this championship, our 9th season in total in what is now ARL's longest enduring championship. I'm Sam Fitzpatrick, and alongside me for this opening round of the championship is Ron Mornsworth. Samuli Kumo operating the cameras and bringing you this stream on Apex Racing TV. Ron, it's fantastic to have you alongside me for this championship. It is no surprise with the popularity of GT3s in iRacing, in sim racing, and in the real world as well, that this championship has endured for ever so long.
Oh yeah, that's definitely an understatement. The GT3s across sim racing spheres entirely, regardless of whether you're on iRacing, Assetto Corsa, or even Project Cars 2, GT3 racing is always one of the biggest categories. That's, you know, there's a lot of people that joke like, oh yeah, GT3 drivers tend to crash, but this series has always put on some fantastic racing. It's always been very clean, and I'm looking forward to covering this season.
For sure, we should really be in for a fantastic championship. The field is ever so close to one another when it comes to pace, but at the moment we are currently in qualifying, and of course first round of the championship is Spa, as has become a little bit of a custom in this series. But it fits in very nicely for this championship because, of course, with the 24 hours coming up, the drivers get some extra preparation. And it's a slightly different format as well for tonight, with 75 minutes in store for the drivers in order to take the first race victory of the season, compared to the normal 60 minutes and also the 25 and 30-minute races that we'll be having later on in the championship. The pro drivers are just about to start their lap times. Each driver class, the AMs, the Pro-Ams and the Pros, get 10 minutes on circuits each. The AMs and the Pro-Ams have already had their opportunity to post as good a lap time as they can. And now Ron, the Pros are starting to line up, and you can see a little bit of strategy coming in. You want to be close to the car ahead to benefit from the draft, but you don't want your lap ruined either.
Yeah, this is definitely a balancing act that you see all across sim racing. I know in the broadcast that I do here on Apex Racing TV, the other Radical Racing Challenge, and the iRacing Israel League, even though it's completely different series, as we see the car spinning around back there. But even though it's a completely different series, you see this strategy come into effect with drivers trying to get the slipstream, obviously, so you can be fast on a straight line. But a track like this, that dirty air can really come back to bite you on the butt coming through some of these corners. So it's definitely a good balancing act that we'll see, and we'll definitely see that strategy come into effect here in qualifying.
We absolutely will do for this first round of the championship. And well, just a quick rundown really of some of our contenders for this season. We've got the iRatings for all the drivers, and I can announce that the highest iRating driver going into this championship is Anders Meyer for Racing Lab Esports, and he is the former Pro-Am champion in the Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup that was held about a year ago. And he was extremely competitive in that, but isn't quite so isn't quite so experienced in GT cars. He also actually won the LMP2 Pro Drivers Championship in the Apex Racing League Prototype Championship. So, I mean, I believe, Ron, we've only had one driver in ARL history who has won championships in 3 different cars. That's Thiago Marteau. He won in F3s. He won in GT3s and also prototypes as well. Anders has a chance here to win championships in 3 different car categories. That would be quite something.
Yeah, that would be a fantastic achievement. Even though it's in the simulator world, winning 3 championships across 3 different series and 3 completely different cars for the most part, it takes a lot of talent to do that. So if he can pull it off, that would be mightily impressive from him.
This doesn't seem like it's a very quick lap for him first up, and you can see some of his pro rivals are setting times, and a few of them seemingly trying to get that first lap in, turning back to the pit straight after crossing the line, and then going out again. The drivers will have up to the 30 minutes, but also beyond that, in a slight twist to what we usually have in Apex Racing League, because the drivers will be able to set sometimes after the 30 minutes is up. And so that might be an opportunity for a few of them to be able to improve on that front. Currently, it is Samarco who is at the top of the standings, followed by Fujita, Biasazzi, and you can see there Montini, despite being a Pro-Am driver, well up there in 4th position, really punching above his weight.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good lap from him. Very close field so far. Right now, only 25 cars separated by about a second and a half. So if there's an indication of anything, we are going to have a very close and very fantastic race tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, obviously, close fields, it's always a good indication, but of course, qualifying is one thing, a race is something completely different. Obviously, many things can happen. You can have a lot more chaos in the race, which, you know, as I said before, these drivers are very clean, but we could expect a bit of chaos with a bit of a different roster that we've seen in years past. But I think we still have a very good race on our hands, just based off of how close the drivers are in qualifying right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we're currently watching Biasazzi, and we were mentioning, apologies, we were mentioning Montini before, but Biasazzi is Montini's teammate, and they're part of G Esports Racing Team White. Now, this team has 6 drivers in the championship for this season, a new team to Apex Racing League. None of the drivers, as far as I'm aware at least, have ever taken part in an Apex Racing League series before. And so a little bit of a kind of new team and potential to get some very strong results. At the moment, they are lining up in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th on the grid, which you can see that they have 6 cars. For 4 of them to be up in the top 6 is a really, really good effort, albeit that could still change because the drivers are about to set their second lap times, and by the way, the times will expire at the 30 minutes. They won't be able to complete the lap time that they the lap time that they start before the 30 minutes. Once the 30 minutes up, everything will transfer over to the race, and the 75-minute event will start. But interesting that Samarco is currently at the top there, Ron, in the McLaren. Not a car that is usually the go-to in the GT3s, but from what I've heard, it's actually extremely strong at this Spa circuit.
I guess that would have to be right. I'm not really too familiar with GT3 racing. Usually my car of choice personally is the Audi. I personally love the way it drives, but you got to have a car that's tuned to each driver. Every driver certainly has their own preferences of what they want to look for in a car, and right now, Samarco is really wheeling that McLaren around quite nicely. it definitely stands out in the field. It certainly stands out on the lap board as he's currently on the pole right now. So we'll have to see how that changes in the next 2 minutes or so. But the car stands out. Definitely looks a lot different compared to the BMWs, Porsches, and Mercedes throughout the field. But still, just he's been able to wheel that thing around quite nicely. And right now, I mean, drivers could still definitely improve their lap times, but right now it's looking very good for Sammarco there.
Yeah, really, really solid first effort for himself. And many others still trying to improve on their lap times at the moment. But yeah, it is currently Sammarco leading the way. Who could perhaps beat him? Kazuki Fujita halfway around his lap at the moment, trying to beat him. Carl Winkler, a returning driver for Core Sim Racing, who have been part of pretty much every season of the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy, or GT trophy as it was called a couple of years ago. And that's a solid time for him so far, for one of the most experienced drivers out on the track. And he's going to be one of the first drivers, I think he is going to be the absolute first driver to cross the line here. But there is going to be a flurry, including his teammate Dominic Engel, who's going to be wanting to improve his fairly lowly position on the grid as it stands. Here comes Winkler, and expect that timing tower to change a lot in the next 25 seconds. Can he improve from that 7th position? He can. He goes up to 4th. Any other changes? Engel, his teammate, moves up to 10th. That's good for Core Sim Racing.
I was going to say that Winkler definitely was trying to look to improve there. He was only about, I think it was 0.02 of a second off the next closest car, so he definitely wanted to improve there, and he does, as he's currently in the 4th position right now in qualifying. Only about 0.4 of a second off of the pole, so very close field, all things considered. I believe the farthest gap from the looks of it is actually Sammarco, who grabs the pole.
And Fujita wasn't able to improve on that last lap, so I thought he might just be able to pip Sammarco right at the end. He wasn't able to get in his 2nd lap time, but he just came up short, and it will be the German on the pole position for this 75-minute race. There he is, ahead of Orion Race Teams, Kazuki Fujita. It's not a good sign if I'm already mispronouncing names and we're only on the front row of the grid. Then it's Christian Biasetti for a fantastic qualifying for G Esports Racing Team in their debut in the series, ahead of Carl Winkler in 4th place. Then it's Tommaso Montini, Emanuel Oliveri, Matteo Colnari, Anders Meyer, Adam Stasinski, Dominic Engel, PJ Kleissens. What does he Kleissens qualify? I mean, usually just doesn't qualify, does PJ, but he could be really dangerous. He likes this circuit as well, I know, from 11th on the grid. There's Marcus Gunzelman in 12th position. Behind him is Taj Edwards. Great to see Taj back in Apex Racing League. It's been too long. There's Roberto Castellezzi, Lasse Sorensen, Kettle Larsen, Eric Rosseth, Kieran Smart, Ethan Bass, Jack Wells, Soren Kroll, Daniel Dennison, Thomas Asfalg, Stuart Wyness in 24th, Christopher Otterholt, Mats Jestrenbacken, Stephen David, Nick Yanni, Balash Tarosky, and David Vey. I'm not even going to go through all the names because I'm not going to be able to get them through them all. And we have had an issue for Emanuel Oliveri for G Esports Racing Team Blue, so that's a disappointment for them. I think that might be a hardware failure because he pulled left very hard right at the start. But here we go, the drivers are getting into formation, and Season 6 of the Apex Racing League GT3 Trophy is underway, and it is Sammarco leading us to La Source for this opening lap of the race. It's a very strong start for him. Biasetti trying to hold on to 2nd position. In fact, he's trying to take that 2nd position from Fujita. It looks like he has succeeded as they start the drop to Eau Rouge before the climb up the Kemmel Straight. Anders Meyer up 3 places. He's up into 5th place. He will be delighted with that, and he's looking to go one bit further on the tail of Montini right now.
Mostly single file so far, but it looks like Meyer is going to have a fantastic run coming out of Eau Rouge. He's going to try and pull the move off, going down the Kemmel straightaway into La Source. He is going to look to try and pass that Porsche ahead of him in his BMW. That's going to be for 4th position as we go to the battle up towards the front. That's the battle for 2nd between Biasetti, and Fujita there. That is very close between those drivers. That's some very interesting battling that we see so far. We have battles all across the field. I said that it was single file early on, but as they exited Eau Rouge and went onto the Kemmel Straight, those drivers started battling. Very good stuff so far.
Jack Wells, I think, with a slowdown. A few others as well. Eric Rosseth. Well, if he picked that slowdown up at Radion, then, Well, that must be a huge slowdown for him to be serving it right there, because it does build on that point. It is such an extra penalty to get a slowdown on that one. And Rosset is now down 10 places from his race start. An awful start for him. Also poor start for Lasse Sorensen. There's now 3 Norwegians in 20th, 21st and 22nd. And I'm sure the front runner of that, Sorensen, would have wanted to be well away from his fellow countrymen right there. And top of the amateur drivers is currently David Ray in his debut in the series. He's up in 25th position. He's just about making it on the timing tower on the left. But Sir Marco is leaving the rest for dead. He's a second clear, and we're not even got the first lap.
And that's a fantastic start from him. As you saw, as drivers were serving their slowdowns, so Marco was pulling away. Very mixed starts that you can have, obviously, at a track like this. There's a lot of room for mistakes. There's a lot of room to pick up a slowdown. We've seen that happen before. I saw it happen earlier in the Radical Racing Challenge when one of the other top runners in that series actually picked up a slowdown lap 1, and he cratered down from about 3rd down to 10th. So we see how slowdowns that you pick up at Eau Rouge and Radion can really affect you there. And as we see a car spinning out of the final corner, and that is Dennison there spinning. He is going to have to be stopped here for a very long time as drivers just inches away from collecting him. So very tough break for that driver. He is going to be kicking himself, not only at the mistake, but also having to be stopped there for so long as he finally gets the car spun around. But that has wreaked havoc in his race as he's currently down to 45th.
Yeah, big disappointment right there. To lose quite that many positions. So we've had some big changes. Also a few places just lost for, I believe it was Montini, who was as high as 4th position before, but he has dropped down. Look at that, 2 seconds clear, because these guys are still battling, and it is Fujita who's got back up into 2nd place. He lost it right on the launch. 3rd place seemed to be a better place to start than 2nd place, and he was able to take that position back. Now he's into 2nd position as it stands. But Sir Marco now 2.3 seconds clear, way out of draft range, and the rest of the guys are going to have to work together or just have absolutely incredible pace in order to bring themselves back into play. But if they're going to do that any round, it is going to be this one, because you can see in the top left a 75-minute race coming up for us tonight, the longest race that we have all season long.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of time to play with. You know, we're only 3 minutes into a 75-minute race, so definitely a lot of time for these drivers to catch up to San Marco. And also, in this series, we do have pit stops to contend with later on in the race, so that'll be very interesting to see how some drivers try their hand at strategy. Right now, I believe that was a timing issue on our end. I was about to say that Castellozzi was actually in the pits, but it looked like that was just a small glitch on our end. We apologize for that, but there's definitely a lot to play with. There's definitely a long way in this race to go, and at a track like this, just each corner, you know, as they're barreling through, as we see Motini there barreling through Blanchimont there. A lot of corners, a lot of fantastic corners here, but there's corners that he can make a big mistake on. We've seen big mistakes. We're seeing a big mistake there from Winnes there. Very tough break for him. He lost it at Blanchimont from the looks of it, and his car is destroyed. You can see the damage on that thing. He is crab walking as he finally gets out of the grass and back into the asphalt. But tough break for him. That will likely be his night done, as he is crab walking like you've never seen before. Some Old Bay seasoning on his car after a crash like that.
Yeah, and he's trying to get back into the pits as well. Ever so tricky to do when you have to go from the left side of the circuit over to the right in order to get back into the pits. They do get a faster pair, so he will be able to get back out there, but he won't be able to get to the end of the race without taking another pit stop. You really need to be getting to about the 20-minute mark in order to comfortably get to the end of the race on a tank of fuel. And so he will have to do an extra tour of the pits, which isn't quite as bad as the 24. We're not using both pits, we're just using the GP pits, hence why, of course, we went on the green flag on the GP straight earlier on in this race, unlike, I believe, the official series so far this week. We're running on board with Alexander Skerritt, one of the many drivers of IGL Coatings. This time, IGL Coatings e-racing by Sunday Chukskol. And I believe that might be the longest team name that we have for this season, but it fits on our overlay, and so that's what matters. And Alexander very kindly putting up a profile picture as well, which always looks very good on the broadcast, so thanks Alexander for that.
If it fits, it works, you know, regardless of how long a name has to be, just as long as it fits on our graphics here on Apex Racing TV, we don't have a problem with it.
A few supports in the YouTube chats. Daniel Storkerson supporting Anders Meyer, and Camille Dilly's going for Stephen David out there. Daniel Storkerson also supporting Baselab as well. And Nicholas HPX also supporting Stephen. So do let us know who you are supporting for. Also Mario Kart, to be fair, going for Biasetti and Costelletti. Which of course are part of G esports. Currently, Biasetti up there in third position on debut. In fact, the top 3 are all on their Apex Racing League debut right now. So it really is strong performances from all of them. But that is what we're expecting, all very accomplished drivers in other championships. Currently the gap at 2.7 seconds, 2.8 seconds after 3 tours of this Spa circuit.
I will say, as much as Samarco was pulling away quite a lot in the early stages of this race, his gap is really just flatlined for the most part. It is plateaued around the 2.8, 2.5 second mark. I say that. It's closing in on 3 as they go down the Kemmel straightaway, but still, Samarco's gap has started to kind of, no, I wouldn't say dissipate. It's still pretty big, as you see that, as you see from our camera view looking down the Kemmel Straight, but still, he has flatlined a little bit in pace, so we'll have to see. Maybe Samarco's just dropping off a little bit. We could see Fujita close in. Mixing up my words already. It's been very interesting race, and this will be an interesting battle to watch. We'll have to see if Samarco is still maybe just saving up his stuff, maybe just taking it easy at this stage of the race, doesn't want to push too hard and make a mistake at a track like this, where if you make one low mistake, you could be in for a world of hurt. So he could just be taking it easy so far. What do you think, Sam? Is he taking it easy, or is he just kind of dropping back in pace?
I think he is just not barely even thinking about anything right now, because I think a lot of these guys would have done so much prep for the 24 hours. When it comes to racing this circuit, they probably just go into autopilot and are just, you know, churning in the laps, probably doing similar kind of pace to what they'll be doing in the 24 at the weekend. And yeah, not even having to think about too much. And this is Spa as well, a circuit that all these guys know ever so well. And it is such a popular circuit, such an easy circuit to churn in laps. It's one thing to do practice around a circuit that isn't so enjoyable, but these guys, it is one which is particularly fun to prepare for. There was a little bit of battling before between PJ Clysons and Jack Wells. Clyson's actually getting to the back of Jestrenback, and now I believe Wells, who set the fastest sector 2 of anyone, I think on the previous lap. Out of nowhere, Clyson's going one way, then the other way. He's lost a lot of places from his start. He started up in 11th place, did Clyson's, but he's going to make one of those places back now. He edges his way past Jestrenback, and that was extremely close, but the IGL Coatings car left him space, and I do threaten for the Norwegian now, because he has got a long queue of cars lined up behind.
Right now, that queue of cars is starting to battle. We're seeing a battle right now between Vey, who's currently, I believe, still the leader in the amateur division here, currently battling with Tarutsky there, I believe. Those two in the BMWs are battling there. They went side by side, going down the Grand Prix straightaway, but they managed to hold position from the looks of it. And now we're seeing that battle again with Clayson's there. We saw him get the move done at the bus stop, and now he is defending as hard as he can from the back of Wells there. These three, actually, it's a three-car battle here from the looks of it. These drivers are very close. 3 cars, 3 drivers, 3 manufacturers, so this is very close here. The BMW nearly goes into the grass there. That was very close for Jestrenbach in there, and he manages to hold on, but actually loses a position there. He might lose another one here. From the looks of it, it looks like Vey tried to look for a move around the outside, going through turn 10, but he manages to hold on to that position for now.
And the drivers score points for their overall position, not their class position. So for David, there is an incentive for him to beat as many of these Pro-Am and Pro drivers as he possibly can. And because that'll get him extra points. He wants to put a bunch of cars between him and the other amateur drivers if he can possibly do so. He's in this race as much as anyone else. So that is why he's been quite so aggressive right now. Jestrenbach for now holding on to that 21st position. Question in chat, Mario Kart asking what happened to Olivieri. I believe Olivieri just swung to the left on on the formation lap, apologies. And I think it was a hardware failure where he just, you know, jolted to the left and went straight into the wall. It could have been contact, but like I said, I don't think it was. In fact, we might even be able to get a replay of this. Our producer, Sam Kumo, who may well have been doing the first ever season of the Apex Racing League GT trophy many years ago. And it is just a hardware failure right there.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for him, especially to have that. Like, if you have it towards the end of the race, you're like, maybe it just wasn't tonight. But have that happen at the start is just so demoralizing right now. We're seeing Pew go off, but to have a hardware failure happen so early on in the race is such a shame. I myself have had a fair share of hardware issues. One time I was doing an official race on iRacing, and then suddenly my monitor blanked out. So we're gonna get a replay here of the
Clayson's.
Yeah, Clayson's there.
So he's got Wells behind him. What's happened? Oh, maybe that's another hardware failure because he just hasn't turned that. Oh, PJ. Honestly, anyone who's not familiar with PJ, and a lot of you guys will be, because races for Arctic Racing, as Dominic Engel might be having a bit of an issue dropping down the order. Yes, he has. He's gone off at Malmedy as Dominic Engel, and that is Jack Wells. So Jack Wells not getting away from a battle, and there's contact now, and it's gone from bad to worse for Dominic Engel. Fortunately, in the sim, there's still gravel there, unlike there was in real life a few years ago. And he is able to go back his way, but wow, finding the gravel in two corners there, Dominic.
Well, I think that second incident of finding the gravel was really through no fault of his own. I think the driver behind him tried to do a bump and run there going through turn 10 with disastrous results for Engel. He's currently in 27th. Went through the gravel 2 laps in a row, so right now his tires are probably screaming in pain, well, muffled screams through the gravel that's stuck on his tires. So tough break for him there. You don't really see too many bump and runs for an obvious reason in a GT3 car, especially any bump and runs at a track like this. Turn 10 here at Francorchamps nearly looked like Martinsville turn 1 there. That was interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe an element of the difference in speed coming off of the previous corner with Wells catching quite so quickly, but yeah, he still gave a big shove as DJ Vladimir has unfortunately gone off. DBR by McChallenge is the team that he's representing. However, he has suddenly reappeared back, so I think it was just a small connection issue for him there. Here is Kim Andre Borkland. He is battling with Christopher Crook. I think Crook is going to be one of the most competitive amateur drivers for this season. And he's also got a fantastic profile picture as well. I think we actually embarrassed Christopher because I literally made a video for the Apex race or the SDK Gaming social media accounts as Thomas Burns has had a big crash. I think that's 3 drivers involved because Paul Joseph Clister's off. Behind them is Daniel Dennison with the second incident he's had so far this evening.
I was about to say that was Porsche on Porsche crime there. From the looks of it, is the number 22, the 222 there of Danielson does a interesting interpretation at track limits. We're going to get a replay here.
Oh, he's just going to swing back, isn't he? Oh, man. Well, that is unfortunate, and I think it was Dennison who originally was at fault. I think the car ahead of him lifted through Blanchemont. There was a bit of discussion from the drivers earlier on whether you should lift at Blanchemont or not. Some drivers not feeling quite as comfortable as others, and Dennison there just didn't take into account that the driver ahead may be a little bit slower, and yeah, ended up spinning and of course collided with other drivers behind him in the end. Thomas Verm here, he is with Thomas Pugh. Pugh, of course, with that spin earlier on, so very much looking to come back through the pack if he possibly can, is the privateer driver.
Very interesting race that we've seen so far. Pugh has put together a very interesting race, all things considered. We saw his, he had some issues early on, but so far, very clean race. We've seen a lot of drivers have issues so far. We've seen mechanical issues, we've seen crashes, we've seen technical issues. It's a good thing we've only seen one technical issue, though, well, at least a disconnect. We've only seen one disconnect from the looks of it. If we have that happen a few more times, we might have a repeat of the virtual 24 hours of Le Mans, and I don't think any of us want to tread on that territory.
No, that's his. As a league organizer, I I hate to be in those people's shoes during that when it is the worst feeling when something like that happens. So yeah, hopefully the next edition goes much more according to plan. I believe it is going to be on Factory rather than the new Le Mans Ultimate game. But yeah, I'm sure more details will be provided on that in the next few months. As we tune back in with this one, Jeff Hancock's, again, many of the drivers submitting profile pictures, some of our rookies even. Brilliant work, guys, much appreciated. Of course, if you do want to submit an image, do go to sdk-gaming.co.uk, and yeah, you can upload one via the driver information app. It's a free download, so yeah, that is how you get your faces on the channel. And Dirk Bout's with that bear, that golden bear. I don't know what it means. Maybe if he has an interview, we'll be able to find out what the golden bear means. There has been a few changes near the front. Anders Meyer's up into 3rd position. He got past Biasetti. But Montini's staying in 6th position right now, very much kind of the leader by himself. Then it's a group of 4, and Montini is then leading this this trio of cars from 6th to 8th.
Yeah, it's nice. We're seeing some pelotons build throughout the field. Obviously, right now we're seeing a peloton from Montini from 6th all the way back. So it's very interesting to see these groups kind of format. It leads to some fantastic stuff, regardless of what series. And we've seen some fantastic kind of pelotons form in the Radicals. I've had the privilege to cover a lot of those races and a lot of those pelotons, which leads to some very interesting stuff. It was actually here early in the Radical season where there was like a 4 or 5, or I think it was a 6-car peloton actually that formed. There was some fantastic stuff there. It's a good thing I mentioned peloton for about 5 times, because I think the Tour de France is ending. I don't know, I don't really follow pedal bike racing personally, but I don't know, maybe anyone that's in the live chat now is a fan of the Tour de France and can appreciate the use of the word peloton there, or we're seeing a good battle. That'd be a good motorsports term to use here. It looks like, I wouldn't say that Montini is kind of holding up the other cars behind him. I wouldn't say Montini is holding up Gunsman there, but it's definitely a peloton. It's definitely a pack starting to form here. It's very interesting to see what this might evolve into, as we're right now about, well, nearly 20 minutes into this race already. It's flown by.
Yes, it really has done. Great to see Taj Edwards, the Jamaican driver, up there in 9th place. He took part in the Apex Racing, gosh, I can't remember what the series is called. It's our Sunday night series. Apex Racing League GT. Yeah, we used to have a championship called just the Apex Racing League GT Championship, and Taj was part of that. To be fair, I think he's also taken part in Porsches more recently. Always does send me back a little bit to those races a few years ago, but he's busy doing very well, is Edwards at the moment, up there in 9th position, and could be in that pack come later in the race. As we see Carl Winkler, I think this is a good place for Winkler right now, honestly. I think he's saving a lot of fuel. I wouldn't be surprised if he's lifting and coasting a bit. And, you know, you don't want to be leading a pack at this point, honestly, Ron. I think you want to have that draft, because then you can go further in your stint and take less fuel later on, as there's been a bit of a change here. I think that's Castellozzi, who has dropped maybe as much as 3 places right now. And yeah, Soren Kroll is the latest to move up. He's up to 13.
Very rough series of corners for them, but getting back to the point that you said about trying to save fuel at this stage of the race, I honestly agree with you there. I mean, we're 20 minutes in the race. Earlier in this broadcast, you said how 20 minutes was kind of the area where we could see some drivers coming into the pits in the next 10 or so minutes. I don't think we will, to be brutally honest. I think we might see some pit stops later on, but we could definitely see some drivers farther behind trying to do something else, and maybe they could file into the pits. But I think in this stage of the race, it would be very good just to sit behind another car, save fuel. At this point in the race, it's not really that important to just gain 1 or 2 positions here and there. I think it's just best to try and play the long game, stay behind another car, save fuel, send that slipstream. You might get some hot air in the cockpit, and you might get some dirty air coming through the corners, but I think you get dividends with your fuel mileage.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And yeah, I think as Castellozzi has had, that's just an off. It's usually much worse at Blanchimont if someone does have a pit off track. There goes the centre. I don't think that was deliberate there from Asfog. I think he just suddenly came across a very ailing Porsche 911 and had to decide one way to go. And it gets even worse for Castellozzi. He's now down 5 places from his race start. He's wide again. It's an awful few corners there for Roberto. It could have been a bit of a movement from the car ahead in the braking zone. I'm sure the car ahead would argue, well, I was just turning into the corner. Castellozzi would say that would be a very early turn, because they were about 100 meters or 50 meters away from the corner. So yeah, just continuing to drop down right now is the Italian driver, as he looks to recoup as they head up the Kemmel Straights for the 10th time in this race.
I'm not sure if it'd be an appropriate reference to reference the Hindenburg disaster, but that's what Castellozzi looked last lap. He was dropping through the field like a Zeppelin that's burst into flames, so that was a very tough lap for him. So hopefully he can spend this lap to try and recoup his stuff, get his bearings straight, and then hopefully try and cut through the field. I mean, I said last lap how some of these drivers may just want to stay in their position and kind of relax a little bit, but these drivers are still battling very hard, and I think Castellozzi is going to try and cut through the field, get back to the position he was at before, and try and recoup from the mistakes he showed last lap. So that was a very tough lap for him. But getting back to the point I briefly mentioned there when talking about Castellozzi, we are still seeing a lot of these drivers battle, which is interesting to me. Maybe it's just racing drivers being like, yeah, I want to go out for all glory and just go out and try and pass a car and make some kind of iRacing highlights reel. But as we're seeing a mistake there from I believe that was Leo there that went wide. We see another driver going very wide there. That was Kimi Andrean Björklund that actually went wide. I recognize him from the Radical races, and unfortunately for him, he made a mistake going through turn 12 there. That was a very tough break for him. We're seeing Asflag have some kind of issue. That was an interesting place to have some kind of mistake. Maybe he must have had a big snap, or maybe it's some kind of yeah, I'm not sure what could be going on there. We see some front-end damage. Maybe he got brake checked a little bit by a car having a big moment coming out of turn 16.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's still running. Like, usually if you crash at Stabilo, then that's it. But he's not got enough damage to have to tow back to the pits. He will get into the pits, and crucially, like I was saying earlier on, you can go as far as 55 minutes on fuel, and so he will be able to get to the end of the race from here. So the only time he's lost is the time ailing back to the pit, so you won't have to do an extra pit stop later on. So that will be some comfort for Asfag, and he could still get back into the top 20, I think, by the end of this race, but certainly not as high as what he would have been hoping for. By the way, thanks to all the Europeans who are taking part tonight, because it's easy for me to forget, because in the UK it's actually been a pretty rubbish day, because it's been like 15 degrees Celsius and a bit rainy. But over in Europe it is very warm, and hopefully everyone's staying safe with the extremely high temperatures that are going on. So yeah, thanks to still jumping in your rigs, and probably getting very, very warm. Still a very good turnout for tonight. So yeah, thanks to everyone for that one, and yes, have a good break up this, because I think over there right now, Ron, I think it's peaking at about 45 degrees in some places that these drivers will be experiencing.
Might have to get the conversion up there. I know.
I think that's about 110 Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. I was about to complain about it being 90 degrees where I live currently, but 110 degrees is just absolutely not. I'm not a fan of hot weather at all. I know this past Saturday I was stuck working on my kart outside when the feels like temperature was about 101 degrees, and I knew that was absolutely torture trying to put a new axle in the go-kart for about 5 hours. That to me felt like some kind of medieval torture. So being out there in 110 degree weather is just, that is not good at all. So my thoughts go out to the people being affected by that extreme heat wave in Europe. So it is good to see a lot of these drivers come out tonight, but hopefully after this, they might be a bit sweaty after this, and definitely need to hydrate after a race like this, because not only do you have the heat to deal with, you also got the heat from the laptop, and also the other pressure being built up to try and do well in this race, especially when it's a season opener.
Yes, absolutely. We got Stephen David, I think, just moving past Roberto Castellozzi there. Yeah. Castellozzi with another poor time, 19.98, leader 17.78, so he's over 2 seconds off that last time. It just seems like he's lost his momentum, and struggling to keep the car within the white lines at the moment as it stands. Just a few other things that are going on. There is some market 4.4 seconds up here. I don't think we're going to show a whole lot of Antonino tonight, honestly. Not the highest I-rated driver, but he's dominating right now. But like I said, a lot of drivers preparing for Spa 24, and the McLaren is very strong at this circuit. Bass versus Stasinski is going on for 11th position, and now there's contact. They're both round. Others are going to be involved as well. That is Soren Kroll, who has spun round for Beast Racing, and that is 3 drivers having their races significantly compromised. I think they can all get back going again, but Kroll is losing a lot of time once again, and to let many drivers overtake him before he can rejoin the track.
This kind of torturous watching Kroll, and unfortunately I believe he did have to tow that, or the screen just blanked out on my end. Either way, very tough break for him. Yes, he is still trying to get turned around. This is absolutely torturous, trying to see him get back onto track. Right now we're seeing Vey have some trouble. That's a very tough break for him. He was the leader of the amateur division, so very tough break for him that his race has kind of been affected this way, so he's been slowing down quite a lot. I don't believe he has too much damage from the looks of it, but very tough break for those drivers that crash up at the front. That's very unfortunate, and really no more unfortunate spot to do. I mean, obviously you have some areas where, well, you never want to crash, but at a track like this, there's certain areas where if you crash, you're really in a world of hurt. Obviously, Eau Rouge and Radillon, that's just not a place you want to crash, regardless of what kind of magnitude of crash you have there. It's usually like magnitude of 8 and above, so don't want to have crashes. Unfortunate for those drivers that they got involved in that, and that was brutal to see that driver try and just stop there, try and pull like the New Jersey like 565 point turn in the grass there, trying to get it turned around without having to just mash the gas and swinging around on the asphalt, maybe collect another car that's coming by. So very tough break for those drivers there.
Yeah, Ethan Bass was one of the drivers involved, and he's gone back to the pit, so we'll fuel that thing up. We'll go to the end of the race. Don't think anyone will be changing tyres. We actually did in the ASUS, Apex Racing League Endurance Championship, on Friday. There were teams in the GT3 category who did the whole 3 hours on one set of tyres, even though you lose no time during the tyres. But because it takes time to warm up the tyres, it was actually an advantage just to keep them on and not have those few laps of having to warm them up. So seeing that it's only going to be 20 minutes most likely that we expect most drivers to be pitting in on about 55 minutes. Seeing that it's only going to be 20 minutes, there's no way I think anyone is going to take tyres for this race, even though there's a little bit of penalty, because obviously they are taking a full tank. Would lose you about 15 seconds in the pit stall. Jack Wells trying to move past Lasse Sorensen there. As a sort of a action-packed day. So Stephen David has just got past David Bay a little bit further down. Just looking at some other battles right further down. I say right further down, that's very patronising of me, isn't it? But I didn't mean like that. 40th position for Simon Andre Livingston is currently holding off Thomas Pugh and John Duraguris. We have seen Pugh already tonight, but we haven't seen these other two, and this is a close trio battle, just showing that there are fights all the way down in our 48 cars that remain in this race.
It's fantastic whenever you see a race, and regardless of what position the drivers are running in, they're still trying to battle and claw for every position they can find. So it's really good to see, even though these drivers are farther back in the field, they're still trying to give it everything they have to claw for even a 40th, 41st, or 42nd position. So it's very interesting to see these lower class battles, and regardless of what position they're running in, it's always nice to touch base on these drivers. These drivers, they're spending their time with us, and we got to appreciate them. We got to show them some respect by following the battles throughout the field, regardless of whether it's up at the front or whether it's towards the back. So me personally, I've always been a fan of lower in the field battles. I know in Formula 1, really lower field battles is all you can see for the most part in terms of action, but right now in this race there's action all up and down the field, so it's nice to touch in on the battles up at the front, up in the midfield, and towards the back as well.
Winkler holding off BS. No, he's just past Biasetti, apologies, because it was Maya who got past Biasetti before. Now Winkler has got past as well. There's a little bit of a chasm formed between Maya and Winkler, so Winkler, I think, will be pushing these next few corners just to get that 1.2 second gap down a little bit. Wants to stay well in the draft, as Jack Wells has just got past Lasse Sorensen, so as Wells' teammates had an issue a couple of laps ago. There's no stopping the British driver at the moment, and of course the LMP1 amateur champion in the Apex Racing League Prototype Championship earlier this year. Edwards has caught up this pack, so Montini is still in 6th place. Gunzelman was unable to get past. Montini and Kolnagi are teammates, so they're in 6th and 7th. And then this train is growing because Edwards and Larson weren't with these guys before, but they've been able to make up about 3 seconds over the last 10 minutes to join this and make it a 5-car battle.
And if you look on the live timing screen, you can see the gap between Larson and Starzinski between 11th and 10th and 11th position. Those drivers are very far apart. So this pack you're seeing here is really the only cars for miles, because you have Pasolini about 6 seconds ahead, well, 6 seconds behind. And then you have massive gaps in the next car. So right now we're seeing the battle here between the 2 Porsches, the 2 teammates as well. This will be interesting. I don't know, maybe at this stage of the race, if you're Montini, maybe you should just like stick behind and just get that good fuel mileage. We were talking earlier in the race about how leading a pack like this, you're going to get way worse fuel mileage. So I was thinking while you're talking there that we could see some swapperoo happen between the 2 teammates at the front of this peloton here, and we just saw that as they went through the final series of corners there.
Yeah, that one was, I'm fairly certain, was tactical, because Montini seemed to lift off, stay on the inside of the circuit, and let his team go. But they were very close to contact, so it's good work for them not to make any contact, and I'm sure there won't be any retaliation into Les Combes. However, apologies, Gunzelman was thinking of making a move. Of course, this is going on tonight, but tomorrow we have the start of another new Apex Racing League series, the Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup, season 8 of that. This is, I know it says season 6, but it's sort of the 9th season. But season 8 of the Porsche Cup, these series are really racking up a lot of races now. And yeah, you can still sign up for the Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup tomorrow. If you go to apexracingleague.com, you can find more details about the series. It's 6 rounds in 6 weeks, so it's a little bit of a cheaper series as well. It's following the PESC Qualifiers series, so if you're looking to take part in that, it's a really good championship because it will be copying the weather conditions and the tracks for that championship. We've already got 35 drivers signed up, and so if you want to join the field, do go to apexracingleague.com in order to register. Unfortunately, you can't register for this series at the moment because we maxed out on 60 entries, so that is not possible. However, entries may well be open later on in the season. Do check out the Apex Racing League Discord. There's a link in the description below to join that, as we see a very tight battle right now between Castellozzi and Scaret. And Scaret trying to go on the inside of Lafagna, but he was shoved out almost onto the gravel before he could get past into Stavlo.
That was definitely a spirited battle between those drivers as they went through the turn 13, 14, 15, 16 complex there. So that was very heated battle there. We're seeing a very interesting pass here from the number 242 there. That's Roseth trying to look at the inside going into the final chicane, and unfortunately is not able to pull the move off on Sorensen ahead, but he's still going to have a very interesting run. We'll see. He'll try and look for the move around the outside, going through La Source. That'll be an interesting space to get a move done. He's a bit earlier on the brakes, though, compared to the number 180 ahead of him and Sorensen. And Sorensen stays ahead for the time being, but it'll be interesting to see how that battle develops when they go onto the Kemmel Straight. And we're seeing some more battling here farther back in the field right now. This is the battle outside the top 30 between a lot of these drivers. That's Bass looking for the move down the inside of Kroll. We saw Kroll was involved. Actually, both of these drivers were involved in that incident we saw a couple laps ago. So those drivers are battling, only now instead of battling towards third position, right now they're battling for 33rd. So very interesting turn of events for those drivers. I'm sure they wouldn't prefer, but they're still in the race. There's still plenty to go for here tonight.
Ooh, Livingston barely making the corner. There's also a bit of debris just sat in the middle of the circuit as well. I'm not sure who that belongs to. Colin Sampson, who had to have his wits about him in order to avoid. By the way, a word on Bass, he did come into the pit, and really does demonstrate just how much time Kroll lost, because they're involved in the same incident. And and Bass was able to pit and come out in the same place because Kroll was just stranded waiting for all the cars to overtake him. So he lost an entire pit stop basically to Kroll because he was having to wait for the cars to get past in that instant that they had at Malmedy. And I think that may have been a slowdown there for Sansom. Year 1 Racing, of course, one of the most, surely the most experienced team in the field. Year 1 were part of BSRTC years and years ago. That ended in 2019. I'm pretty sure they were probably around since the mid-2010s. Great to have them involved in the championship. Again, Sansom, an experienced driver, and seeing that he is sort of my namesake, I will always support him. There is a battle here between Kroll, who had been able to get past Hancock's. Fantastic work there from Kroll, and of course he was under pressure from Bass just a few moments ago, so he's been able to put a car between himself and the Orbit DBM car.
Very interesting racing that we've seen so far, very spirited racing, and we've also had a very spirited chat so far. I really appreciate the other people in the other live stream chats here on Apex Racing TV on YouTube, tuning in and watching this race, spending your time with us here tonight. We very much appreciate you. Some fantastic racing that we've seen so far. We're about halfway through this race already. We're 37 minutes into a 75-minute race. My apologies for that. And right now we're seeing some more interesting battling here for Bass. That was a very good point that he brought up with the amount of time Kroll lost, how Bass went into the pits. Kroll was just kind of sitting there for the most part, just stuck there in the grass, not trying to do a very dangerous rejoin. I'm sure he was probably just wincing. It was just like just drawn out, like just pure pain that he had to have felt as he was stuck there on the side of the road and watched all those positions go by. Right now we're seeing two cars going side by side. That's Bass and Hancock's there going side by side through a Rouge and Radion, and there's contact there, and Bass, that could have been a lot worse than it was, but he still hits the wall, first into the tire barriers and then into the concrete barrier, exiting Radion. That will be basically his night over, as he'll likely have to do another pit stop. Tough break for him.
There was some netcode, but you're sort of asking for going into that. I mean, both drivers will argue one way. Bass will say, well, I was going to get past anyway, so why didn't you back out, Jeff? Jeff will argue, why should I back out? And now Jeff's gone for the move again on as Hancock's. Is he going to be able to get past as the 384? Well, I don't think he's making too many friends out here at the moment, albeit I think he's maybe just given that one up a little bit easier. I say that. He's taking the place. He's up ahead of Verm, and Verm will be a little bit frustrated with that one because Hancock came from a long way back in order to make that move. Fantastic to have some representation as well from South Africa. We have got, I believe, have we got any Aussies in the race? We don't. That's a shame, because I think we have 6 continents. We got Cesar Sebral from Brazil, representing the South Americas. Enough of me rambling, there's been a crash. It's Rosser, and it's Sorensen. Rosser's coming back across the circuit, and how did the 236 survive that? But they haven't survived that. That is Engel, through no fault of his own, has been wiped out, and we've seen some very cautious rejoins so far tonight. That wasn't one of them.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't it. That was, I'm sorry, I was so focused as we're seeing Sorensen crab walk back to the pits. I would reference Old Bay seasoning again, but I don't think the Brits in the audience, especially you, Sam, as a Brit yourself, would understand that reference too well. But that was, oh, that was a massive moment there from those drivers. I don't know who it was there that just gunned it through there and managed to get through that cleanly, as we're seeing a replay of the accident there. Just hard racing there, going through Blanchimont, and we're going to see the Porsche go through, threading the needle.
Incredible.
Oh, and definitely not a good thing there from the other Mercedes. Who's also following Sorensen there. That Porsche, I'm sure they had to have been screaming as I was just looking at that. I can't even imagine what they were thinking driving through that and just seeing that carnage ensue behind them. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's yeah, it was luck of the draw right there. Obvious. I'm seeing it again in the broadcast. It's absolutely brilliant. We've got another car round. It's John Duguris, who is in 36th position. But he's got back going as the TME Motorsports driver, so it's not too bad for the American. We are over halfway through this race now. As we tune back in with Samarco, he is leading this race, and he has been this whole way. Gap at 4.7 seconds, changing a whole lot. They were still a 10.5 seconds faster than Kazuki Fujita that last time round. Still a group behind him, however, there is three. Fujita, Maya and Winkler, they have been able to drop Biasetti. Biasetti now a bit by himself, 2 seconds back. And might just have to settle for 5th place. And then, of course, you've got that next battle with Colnini, who's been able to pull away actually from his teammate Montini. And in fact, a gap actually forming as well to Edwards. So these 5 were very close to one another. Now the front 2 of this pack have kind of jumped away and have left Edwards, Gunzelman and Larson to fight amongst each other.
Now, this is a very interesting point that I've been meaning to ask for a couple laps. Right now, we're seeing the headlights on these cars. We started in the late evening, and we are now going into the night. So my question is, for some of these cars, how will they change as the night falls? How will these cars kind of change a little bit? I mean, obviously, being an American myself, I'm kind of used to oval racing, where a race can start in the day, then switch to night, and then a lot of drivers will have completely different race cars from when they started the race. But I think it's still somewhat holds true in GT3 racing, where you'll have one car that handles a certain way in day, then as dusk falls, as we're seeing a Porsche spin there.
Yeah,
it's a very tough break for him.
He was pulling away in 5th position. He was by himself, was Montini. Apologies, wasn't 5th position, it was
6th.
7th position. I think he was behind Paul Nahi. And yeah, he was having a good few laps, was the GE Esports Racing Team Blue driver. Here was the mistake, and it's just a mid-corner using the rear end. Is easy to do, downhill. Car always wants to sort of do that, and Montini wasn't able to catch the slide. Fortunately, was able to find a gap, so he didn't lose a whole lot of time. He now sits in 10th place, and across, he is our Pro-Am leader as well, and now only has a 0.4 of a second advantage over 2nd place in the end. Adam Starzinski and Jack Wells, who started outside the top 20 in this race. He sits in 3rd in this class, and will be looking to pass the pair of them very soon.
This will definitely be a good battle. That's very unfortunate, though, for Montini, but thankfully for him, he didn't go the way of Kroll, who was stuck on the side of the road for about an hour and a half waiting for the traffic to pass. So thankfully for him, he was able to get turned around somewhat speedily, but unfortunate mistake for him. But getting back to the point I was going to raise earlier, this is really a question for you, Sam. How do you think that handling of these cars might change as the sun falls down?
I think it will generally become a little bit more grippier across the track. Sort of losing a little bit of temperature. It is in the summer, so I think it started off at a little bit of heat. And yeah, we'll just be getting a little bit cooler up there. Yeah, 21 degrees, so you might lose a couple of degrees, but I don't think it will make a huge difference. I mean, it's the challenge that the drivers will kind of struggle with when it comes to the 24 hours. And so, once again, anyone who's done prep for the 24 hours, you have a set, you know that will work in multiple conditions. This is the time to use it, albeit, to be fair, it is still just a fairly cool race. It will certainly be getting a lot warmer than this in the 24 hours on Saturday and Sunday, because yeah, in the peak of the summer, of course, the in-sim time is, it will be getting very, very warm. Montini still holding on, 8 seconds now behind Larson, and but holding off Starzinski and Wells as it stands. Montini's pace was very good beforehand, so I think if he can break the draft, he could pull away from these two drivers.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be very heated, I feel. I mean, Montini has always been, well, pretty much been in a league of his own so far this race. I mean, he's been pretty much well clear of the rest of the competitors he's been racing against, so now that Starzinski and Wells are seeing the back of Montini's car, I think they're going to try and get the elbows out. And right now, as we're in the second half of the race now, I think these drivers are going to try and race each other very hard. This will be a very interesting battle to watch. But another thing that we may have to watch in the next 10 minutes is the pit stops are coming up. I believe you said a lot of these drivers will be pitting around the lap 55, the minute 55 mark. And right now we're at 45 minutes into this race, so we could see a lot of field shuffling as the drivers come into the pit road soon.
Mario Kart's very concerned about Oliveri. His wheel broke. His wheel broke. That's what happened to Oliveri. However, he is still racing, I should say, to be fair. He is currently, trying to see where he is. He's up to 29. Run Oliveri. Considering he was in a wall before the race even started, he's having a really good run of it. As you were absolutely right, Ron, that we might see pit stops, and Jack Wells is into the pits. What I would say about Wells is that in the LMP1 races we had in the Apex Racing League Pit Stop Championship, as Castellozzi also comes into the pits, he came on very well as the race went on. And in that car, it's a lot more down to tyres. You have much more degradation than these tyres. But I think there might still be an element of that where Jack isn't a very good qualifier, but he is very good as the race progresses on. So yeah, he will be dangerous. In fact, Castellozzi going on the jacks. I didn't think anyone would be taking tyres, but he is taking tyres. So maybe I was wrong about that one. I don't think Wells did. Took less than 25 seconds to get back out on circuit. I think it's about 26 seconds to take tyres. So he's back out on circuit. He's in 23rd place, and Castellozzi, in fact, actually only 22, as we've got some switching and sliding. Almost a bit like a Webber-Alonso scenario there with the driver coming out of the pits, and Wells is marginally ahead of these guys, and he wants to keep them behind if he possibly can.
Yeah, that was interesting there. That was borderline there with Ivamanik. I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation there, but that was very close with him going through Radion. It looked like he might have picked up a slowdown there, but he was not slowing down going down the Camel straightaway, so maybe he didn't pick up a slowdown. That was very marginal for him. It looked like all four tires were on the south side of the curb, but thankfully for him, from the looks of it, he did not pick up a slowdown there, so that was very good for him. That was definitely very close to picking up a slowdown, though. That was very close. That was also a very aggressive move there as he switched from the inside going into Eau Rouge all the way to the outside. That was some very hard-pumping action that we saw from him. As you see in this race, I mean, as we just saw with a move like that, the aggression is starting to pick up, and now Montini, unfortunate break for him. He it looks like he had some kind of off going through Stavolo turn 16. I think we're going to get a replay here, and we do.
By the way, shouts out to Kieran Smart. He had a very nice move into Lecum. Here's the replay for Montini, and that's of course his second mistake in a few laps. Fortunately for him, he hasn't taken his pit stop yet, so he can crawl back to the pits, get a faster pair, and finish the race. But a race that could have been 7th place and a class victory as well. I don't think he's going to win his class now. With 2 spins, and he needs to make sure he keeps it clean as well for the rest of the race. A few more drivers coming into the pits. In fact, maybe the drivers are taking tyres, and do let us know in the chat if tyres are the way to go. I honestly thought everyone would stay on the same set of tyres, but it doesn't seem to be the case. I think some drivers might even be taking just one side of tyres, because some of these pit stop times aren't particularly long. Of course, for those who aren't aware, fuel and tyres in GT3 racing over the last couple of years in iRacing can be taken simultaneously, but to take all 4 tyres still about 26 seconds. The fuel, I think, should only take about 20 seconds or so, and so like you do lose a bit of time by taking tyres. Seems like De Vlamic there was not taking tyres, but yeah, do let us know in the chats if you know a little bit more than us.
When you raised the point earlier about how some of these drivers may just stay on the same set of tires, you raised up how in certain series, especially in endurance racing, the tires are just so greasy and take so long to come up to temperature that usually you'll see some drivers just prefer to stay on the other tires that they've had on since the start just to keep the heat in them, as we saw a big moment there from Leo coming out of turn 9 there. That was a very interesting moment coming through Malmedy, but he manages to keep it clean. But we see this occasionally in sports car racing all over the world. I know I see it whenever I tune into an IMSA race, where these drivers will just struggle for grip so much coming out of the pits just because the tires are so greasy and they take so long to heat up. But I think the reason why some of these drivers may be taking tires at this stage of the race is because the track temperatures are so hot. I believe you said it was about 21 degrees Celsius a couple laps ago. I have to check that.
Ooh, Son Kroll has had an off already with problems earlier on, Kroll. And I think Dirk Bouts may have had an incident as well at his home race. well, one would have to assume they were connected to one another. Bouts into the wall, hasn't taken his pit stop yet, and I'm sure he will be taking it on this lap. This is what happened through Puon. Oh, he's gone over the bump. Oh, I mean, someone should have learned that by now. I mean, I feel like I've made that mistake about 5 times. And then it was a completely separate incident. Was that the 253 of Tommaso Montini? Montini's having an absolute mare right now out there. And yeah, well, I think that was probably the Italian's fault. And put his rival into the wall.
That was some more Porsche on Porsche crime. We've seen intermingling between some of the classes, but we've seen, we've seen some same car kind of crime that we see in this race. We definitely saw two Porsches get together. That's very tough for those drivers. Kroll is trying to bring it back to the pits, and he's in the grass, spins across the track, manages to hold the brakes. He's going to get some deja vu from the incident he had earlier in the race when he was stuck on the side of the road, but he manages to keep it rolling and doesn't lose too much time, but of course was involved in that incident. His car is destroyed. He's coming into the pits. Very tough race for him. Definitely a forgettable night. I mean, there's still a little while left in this race. We're on 52 minutes of 75 minutes in this race, but still very unfortunate night for Kroll.
As Oliveri has come into the pits, and Mario Carter in the chat will be delighted to see his man right there. So Marco, is he going to come into the pits this time round? We're pushing it on fuel now. Like I said, should be about 55 minutes because there's quite a high fuel consumption circuit. You're on the throttle a lot around this track, one of the highest speed European circuits. He's now 6.1 seconds clear of the rest. It's not a very reflective time tire right now. I've had a lot of drivers in the pits. Highest placed driver who has come to the pits, Jack Wells. We're expecting him to be around Starzinski later on. He was fighting with Starzinski before that pit stop. So yeah, that none of the top 10, none of the top 9, apologies, have or none of the drivers who were running in the top 9 have come into the pits so far in this race. Everyone's just staying out, trying to go as far as they can on fuel. Still a bit of fuel in the packs together. Of course, run as little fuel as you can during the races. There's a little bit of lap traffic as well. Good work there from whoever that was, lets him pass. As Alexander Scarrett decides to come to the pits. He's had an excellent race. He started in 31st place, and he's coming to the pits from 12th.
He's put together a very good drive so far. This will be interesting to see how the field shuffles around once the pit stops are over. Me personally, I'm going to keep my eye on Meyer, currently running in 3rd. He's been kind of, I wouldn't say stuck behind Fujita. He's just been behind Fujita pretty much this entire race. He's been getting the slipstream off that BMW, which has always been a bit of a running joke how massive the BMW is. But he is getting that slipstream. He must be getting much better fuel mileage than Fujita, and certainly much better fuel mileage than Samarco, who's been leading this race from start to finish. He's never really been in the draft. Well, he's been in the draft occasionally when it comes time to lap a competitor, but besides that, he's definitely been in the slipstream a lot less than Meyer has. So it will be interesting to see how long Meyer can actually stretch his fuel, and we'll have to see how long it is until he actually comes into the pits.
Could well be. If there's going to be a difference between any two drivers out here, it's going to be these two, I think. Are they going to push it this time? Honestly, I really hope they come into the pits, because if they do come in exactly on the 55-minute mark, it will sound as though I know what I'm talking about. Colin Sampson, he hasn't pitted yet. He is being overtaken. Samarco comes in. Wow. I mean, this is fantastic commentary. I mean, I'm bathing in it, and all of you are watching this stream are bathing in it as well. Samarco went. He's burnt all his fuel. Is Fujita going to have to come into the pits? No, he's been able to go an extra lap. Biasetti wasn't able to, so neither was Kolnari either. Samarco can go all the way to the end of the pit stop. He's nearly merging into the safety car, and he's taking tyres as well, it looks like. So that does seem to be the popular strategy tonight.
Well, if Samarco wins, and from the looks of how dominant he's been throughout this race, that could very well happen. I'll have to ask him how much you bribed him to pit pretty much exactly on lap 55 there. That was pretty much textbook perfect there, call from you. So, as we're seeing a lot of these drivers just file into the pits. pretty much around the minute 55 mark, so you called it there, Sam. A lot of these drivers coming in at this stage of the race taking tires, which we didn't expect, but of course pitting around the same time that you expected there.
So yeah, it was about half and half really amongst the top 15 drivers or so. So it's now Fujitsu leading the way. You can see Winkler 1.7 seconds behind these guys. We'll need to consider where Biasati was, because Biasati was fairly close to Winkler before pit stops, only a couple of seconds behind. But yeah, they just got to push as hard as they can. I seriously doubt Mai is going to be able to go one lap further than this, unless he has been big fuel saving so far in this race. You sure he won't be able to do it. By the way, Samarco, 18 seconds stationary. So these guys are definitely not taking 4 tyres. 4 tyres is 26 seconds usually. So 18 seconds very much indicates that they're either taking, I imagine it's just like left side tyres, which will cause a little bit of an imbalance, but that seems to be the way to go, and of course it will really help you around those right-handers.
Yeah, I could definitely believe that. I mean, at a track like this, tires do definitely get burned. I mean, even in a series like this where the tires are pretty much indestructible compared to certain series where the tires just fall off very quickly, these tires manage to stretch a very long distance, but these drivers are definitely trying to opt to get tires at this pit stop. Their one pit stop in this race. Well, some drivers we have seen pit multiple times, but definitely not of their own free will there. They've definitely been involved in some incidents if they're coming into the pits 2 times, but it'll be interesting. We gotta ask whoever wins this race what tires they took in the pits, because I mean, I think your prediction there of taking the left side tires, that is probably the most plausible, but who knows, maybe they could be taking both front tires. We never know what tires they could be taking.
Yeah, the reason why I don't think front tires is because it can absolutely ruin like the balance, where it can become so pointy that the car can always be completely unbearable to drive. But I mean, honestly, could well be the case. We will certainly ask later on. I'm amazed that Fujita and Mai have continued. I mean, it's not just Samarco who came into the pits. Pretty much everyone came into the pits in that last lap. How is Fujita, who's been punching a hole in the air for this entire race, being able to continue? And there's no sign of him panicking that he's missed the pit entry or anything. This will get them closer to Samarco. They'll be able to take less fuel than Samarco later on. And I think the gap, which was, what, about 6 seconds, I think it was up to before the pit stops, I think it's going to be less than 3, honestly, when they come out of the pits. And if they don't take tyres, maybe could be even closer than that. So this will get a little bit interesting with 15 minutes to go once it's all played out. There was a slight battle going on further down the order. Nick Yanni versus Dominic Engel. Nice three-way battle here. And these guys have taken their pit stops as well. I say that, they have not taken their pit stops. Colin Sampson hasn't pitted yet. He's gone very far, and he's now being overtaken by a couple of these guys who honestly aren't really in the series.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised you mentioned that point about how Fujita has stayed out of the pits for as long as he has. I gotta wonder if the gap that we saw between those 2 drivers was just them, well, kind of taking it easy for the most part. We'll see if they come into the pits or not here. But this is fantastic stuff. I mean, Fujita, maybe he was just kind of like playing his cards, waiting for the pit stop, playing it smart here. We're seeing Meyer, we couldn't really hear the engine, but he definitely did have a big lift there as they are finally coming into the pits. So as you said, that 6-second gap originally between Fujita and Samarco, as Meyer goes very aggressive on the brakes there, trying to hit that pit speed limit line, but they managed to make it through for the most part. So you mentioned earlier how Samarco and Fujita, their gap was around 6 seconds before the pit stop started. We'll have to see what the gap is here. This will be very interesting.
And he's not going on the jacks. So these guys aren't taking tyres because they're taking so little fuel that it's not worth it. What are they up to? 12. Oh, it's going to be close. It's going to be close between these guys. It's just about still ahead. There goes Samarco, because these guys can cut the inside. And they are not far behind whatsoever, but they are just a bit out of the draft range. As Samarco thankfully manages to get past, I think that's one of the year 1 racers, maybe Colin Sampson, to get past. But yeah, the gap has shrunk by 2/3 right there. The gap now just 2 seconds, but Samarco does have a couple of fresh tyres, whilst Fujita and Meyer are still on the same tyres as they were at the start of the race.
It'll be interesting, and something that will also come into play here is the lapped car that's currently between Samarco and Fujita right now. They're going to catch him at pretty much the worst opportunity. If they caught him on this Camel straightaway, it would have been a lot better, but right now, I wouldn't say Fujita got held up too much by the lapped car there, but he definitely did have to check up a little bit there as they went through Malmedy there, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays into effect. I believe Fujita dropped about 2/10 because of that, as we see a car off behind them going through turn 10.
Yeah, Chris? Or maybe Borkland. It could have been Kim Andre Borkland, actually.
That's unfortunate for him. I was definitely keeping an eye on him, as he's I recognize his name from some of the Radical races. Yeah, this is something different.
Very common mistake.
Yeah, it's a very challenging track. Very challenging track, definitely.
Oh, and he towed back. Well done, Kim Andre Borkland. If there's like a Mother Teresa award for like avoiding a massive accident, then he should win it tonight, because that was very smart to tow when he was bang on the racing line, on the fastest corners on this circuit. We tune back in with Jeff Hancock, so everyone's now made their pit stops. Everyone should be able to get to the end of the race from here. And he's still ahead of Dominic Engel, who's had an absolute mare of a race. So on Kroll, great to see him still pushing out there. He's catching these guys very, very quickly. It was very slow on that last lap, but I think, yeah, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe being held up by Hancock's. Yeah, that is the battle for 31st, and here is Son Kroll, who had an instant at Malmedy and had another instant as well, maybe coming up of Bunchman, it was. That's why he's down in 33rd.
Yeah, he's just had a definitely not a night to remember there from Kroll, but it looks like he's still managed to recover. I mean, he's still running in the 33rd, so certainly not ideal, but at this stage in the race, you know, if he can even break into the top 30, it'll be a miracle, considering how his race is going. He's had a lot of mistakes. We saw he was stopped around about that section between turn 9 and 10 that those drivers were driving through there. He was stopped there for the longest time, and it was just painful to see him drop through the order, knowing fully well that his car wasn't too damaged. He was just stopped at the side of the road for so long, trying not to have an unsafe rejoin. So very tough race for him so far, but he's managed to recover nicely, and the fact he's running in the 33rd position, running in the top 40, let alone, is very impressive from him.
We watch Scarrett overtake Liao. Up 21 places is Liao so far for the GFBZ team, running in 23rd place. And yeah, great to see some Asian representation as well. We have got Asia, South America, North America, Europe, and Africa all represented in this series. Just Australia, or Oceania I should say, and Antarctica, that's inside down. Always am disappointed by the lack of Antarctica drivers in this series. Liao might try to come back. He's very much in the draft, and of course running in 4th place out of the amateur drivers, but like I said, very near the start of the broadcast, you do score points for your overall position, so this is a point at stake for both of these drivers. They want it if they possibly can. He wasn't able to get past on that occasion. There was Liao, and Christopher Crook has caught up to these guys very quickly. By the way, leader of the AMS is David Vey, still for Fendi Racing Team. He's been leading from start to finish, and up to 13th place overall. What a performance from Vey in his Apex Racing League debut. And top of the Pro is currently Starzinski, and he's got quite a gap now because Jack Wells at his pit stop, I think, took all 4 tyres potentially, or maybe just a bunch of fuel, because he was 9 seconds longer stationary. Wells isn't catching at a rate quick enough to catch up to Starzinski, and that hold was so long that Christopher Otterholt has moved up into 2nd position in the Pro-Am. So that's your class leaders out there at the moment.
It's interesting seeing the strategy come into effect in these races. I mean, just the way the cars are. I mean, it's nice having different cars. It's, you know, spec racing is cool because you'll see a lot of close action, but GT3 always has that sort of X factor where you have different sorts of cars racing each other, and that definitely comes into an effect when you have strategy, when it comes to tires, fuel. So that's interesting to see how it's played a bit of an effect. right now there's, I mean, most of the field is made up of Mercedes, Porsches, and BMWs. The only McLaren in the field is one in the lead right now, San Marco, and with a little, coming up to 4 minutes to go here, it looks very good. It looks like he's going to have a dominant night, and so long as nothing terrible goes on in the next couple of minutes, it looks like he'll be able to take a pretty commanding win, and I like that thing. I like the shots that we've had. Thank you, Samuli, following San Marco, because we get to see the afterburner. We get to see the flames shooting out of the back of this thing, and that just looks beautiful as they go through those corners, just seeing the flames spit out of the back of the car. Maybe I'm just a child, but that thing looks sick.
I'm thinking better and better every minute that this race goes on as it gets darker and darker. Sunset was about 10 minutes ago, and so we are very much getting darker at a rate of knots as well. I think maybe if we go, I think maybe one of the cameras actually has like, you're basically like, the camera's like positioned in the flames pretty much. So I'm not sure if maybe the gearbox camera might bathe us in some flames. Let's see. Well, yeah, maybe I changed the camera pack. But there you go. It looks pretty nice. It's a nice view of the car. And of course, yeah, you can see into the engine as well. It's a very cool style. It is over 10 years old now in iRacing, but we still like to have the McLaren on the sim. And so marking now 8 minutes away from the first round of the championship. Not too many battles going on the Seattle circuit right now. It's the gaps on our timing screen all white, which means that they are over 1 second. There's a few under a second, but the drivers mainly finding their position out in the circuit at this stage.
It looks very close from Vey. It looks like he's about 4/10 behind Montini there. Montini, he's managed to recover very well. We saw that he was pretty much in the lead. He was running, I believe, 6th at one stage of this race, and dropped back to 7th when his teammate Kolnagi actually managed to pass him. They're doing a bit of a swaparoo there. It looked like it was a strategic swaparoo there for fuel, but he managed to drop back, got involved in a couple incidents, but he's still running 12th overall and is currently running 4th in the Pro-Am category. So very impressive stuff from him, that he still managed to hold pretty strong. I think he'll probably stay in that position, barring a disaster from him, or if Tarutsky could actually close up about 2 seconds in the next few minutes here. But it looks like a very good drive, all things considered, from Montini. It looked like he was going to get the win in the class, and it looked like he was going to get top 10 overall. So although he will likely finish in the top 15, he might be a little bit disappointing after a night like this, but still pretty impressive recovery from him.
There's a question on the chat. How many inches, I assume that means instances, or incidents, apologies, can a driver take before a disqualification? Well, the drivers won't get disqualified, but if they get 20 incidents, then they will get a drive-through penalty. And I can say, there are a few drivers who have been getting that. I think I'm counting 3 so far, but there are a lot of drivers on 17, 18, 19. In fact, Montini himself is on 19 as it stands, so he needs to be quite careful with those off tracks. Yeah, it is a factor for these drivers, not nearly as bad around Spa as it was a couple of years ago. But yeah, that is something that's going to be the case throughout the season. 20 incidents in every race that we have in this championship, and of course it's a 10-round championship. Will be going all the way to September. We've got a break week involved for week 13, a few weeks down the line. Yeah, it's a pretty rapid championship, and I'm sure the drivers are rearing to start the next 9 races as well, as we see Jeff Hancock's versus Soren Kroll. I think these guys were battling earlier on as well. Hancock's hasn't made too many friends out there today. He has had a couple of very tight battles. That one wasn't so tight. Soren Kroll up to 33rd position for Beast Racing.
Pretty good drive from him. We've seen him. He's shown up on our screens occasionally. He's definitely had a fairly quiet race, especially compared to this man, Soren Kroll, who we saw involved in quite a few incidents. He's damaged his car. I think he's come into the pits twice. And the fact he's come into the pits twice and is still running in 33rd is pretty good. He might have lost 12 positions overall, but I believe he was running in the top 5 at one stage in this race, certainly in the top 10. So it's unfortunate for him. He might be thinking what ifs at the end of tonight, but I still think Kroll has put together a very good drive. We've seen a lot of drivers up and down the field put together some very good and very composed drives. Certainly this man here, Fujita, has put together an interesting drive. He did lead a little bit after Sammarco came into the pits, but he has been running second throughout pretty much all of this race. He's been running in the podium positions all of this race, but it looks like he might get a challenge from his fellow BMW there of Meyer there. This will be interesting in the late stages of this race. We have a couple of minutes left to go. It'll be interesting to see what can happen here.
Yeah, holding on for the whole race. It would be remarkable if Meyer could take that position on the last lap of the race. We are going to have just 2 more laps to go. The leader's going to cross the line with about 3.5 minutes, and it's 2.25 minute lap. So 2 more laps to go for these drivers. So Meyer has maybe 1 more preparation lap before he absolutely launches us on the last lap. Or maybe he just wants to take the opportunity when it comes available. Christopher Crook, that's a shame for him, was running in 5th place. He's still running in 5th place, to be fair, at the end, but he has lost a couple of places to Oliveri. Really come back for Oliveri after his start, and Dennison as well has also got past. There was Crook. I think he was chasing down Liang Liao and had a chance at catching up. There he was, and Liao actually having a few poor lap times recently, so that was very catchable for the Swedish driver, but that mistake has ended any chance of that battle, and yeah, he'll just try to, I think, stay in that 26th to the end of the race now.
From the looks of it so far, I think he might be able to hold off that position. This will be interesting to see if Wells, I believe that, actually no, that's Montini there. That's Montini and Vey battling. This will be very interesting. I believe there's the closest, or one of the closest battles we have up and down this field, as we're, I believe, on 2 laps to go at this point. So this will be interesting to see if Vey can get past Montini. If he managed to get a 12th place finish in AM, was a top running driver in AM by a fairly large margin, that'll be a fantastic drive from him. So that'll be interesting to see if this battle will heat up in the final stages. That'll be quite intriguing.
He's glitching out his Sammarco a bit there. His connection going a little bit faulty, but it's all right. He's still in the server, guys. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, that was a little bit worrying for a moment there. I will just quickly give a shout out, because I haven't given a shout out so far, to Apex Racing Academy. Thanks to them for sponsoring the series. There's Daniel Dennison, just someone mentioning in the chat, Dennison, and he's had to come to the pits, and Christopher Crook as well. I wonder if Crook has gone over the instant limit. Dennison, I think, just ran out of fuel, honestly. Something else. I don't know why he's stationary right now, Dennison. Very odd. But Crook, I think, with a drive-through penalty for going over the instant limit. But yeah, thanks to Apex Racing Academy, and if you are trying to perform for the Spa 24 hours, Apex Racing Academy have provided a number of setups for, I believe, 6 of the GT3 cars. Setups for the Spa 24 hours. So do go to apexracingac.com in order to get yourself a bronze, silver, or gold subscription. And you can get setups from some of the best drivers in the world. You know, Kevin Ellis Jr., Jamie Fluke, and Peter Berryman, and Johan Harth, and many, many others of the best sim racers all in iRacing. So yeah, big thanks to Apex Racing Academy for supporting Apex Racing League, and I think there's a link to them in the description below, as we are on the last lap of the race.
Marco has put together a fantastic drive. He started from the pole, had a pretty decent lap in qualifying. I believe he was about 1/4 of a second ahead of Fujita in second in qualifying, who's currently running second in the race. It's been an intriguing race up at the front. These drivers haven't really been battling too much, but definitely has been as spread out as you see in certain other series. Marco, I think, at one point was about 7 seconds ahead of Fujita, but that was really the biggest gap they pulled throughout this race. So the fact that those drivers have been as close as they have been throughout this race is pretty good chat. This series has definitely lived up to expectations. We've had a pretty good opening round of the year, and it looks like it'll be Sammarco taking the win in the opening race of the year. I say that he still has quite a few more corners to go as he's going through turn 12 now. 20 corners on this track, so we'll be hopefully I don't jinx him, but it's been a very dominant drive from him so far, the only McLaren in the field.
there might be a change for 15th position. I know the chaps are very invested in this fight, and that is Yestrum Bakken being able to get past Stephen David. That's for 15th position, and he made it fairly comfortably into Lekum in the end, so good work there from IGL Coatings to be able to get their man into the top 15. Still Montini and Vey fairly close to one another, and Turoshki as well. I don't think there's going to be any changes, at least not until the race winner, or race leader, wins this race. Because it's been a dominant performance from Antonino Samarco. We know that the McLaren is very strong at this circuit, and we wait to see if he can keep up this form for the rest of the championship. If he can, he will surely be the favourite for this season. The first round of Season 6 of the Apex Racing League GT3 Trophy goes the way of Antonino Samarco. He beats Fujita by 2 seconds at the line. Meyer was in 3rd position. There has been a change for 2nd place in the Pro-Ams. Jack Wells has got past Christopher Otterholt. That is a mighty charge from Wells in the closing stages. He was about 4 seconds behind just a few laps ago. He's still got some traffic to deal with. He's on the inside into Blockschmann. He's dicing his way through, but with those fresh tyres, it looks like Wells will get back to where he was before in that 10th place. But it's going to be Adam Starzinski who will take the Pro-Am victory, and a fantastic start to the season for the Polish driver. Wells finishing in 2nd place and Otterholt in 3rd, and absolutely dominating in the amateurs. David Vey in his Apex Racing League debut for Fendi Racing Team, leading from start to finish, and he has very much put his mark on this championship at the first opportunity. Gordon Horg will be in 2nd position in the AMS, and Yannick Willems, who we didn't see a whole lot of honestly in his home race, he will finish in 3rd place. We're waiting to see if there's going to be any very late changes at these final few chicanes. It looks fairly neat and tidy, at least for Skorets and Sebral, finishing in that order. And or maybe just Dirk Bouts versus Dominic Engel. Bouts, another home driver. He was put in the wall earlier on. Engel has had his own problems as well. This is going to go to the last corner, I think.
I believe Engel was actually involved in this massive pile-up we saw going into the bus stop chicane about halfway through this race. So the fact that he's managed to recover as currently battling Bouts for the 31st position overall, as he looks for a move around the outside at the first part of the chicane. It looks like Dominic Engel went a little too deep in there and actually got passed by Kroll. Kroll manages to get by. Kroll had a very dramatic race as well, and he manages to slip through the very last second to get by Engel and manage to take 32nd position overall. So Engel looked like he was going to try and go for a move on Boots for 31st overall, and ends up finishing 33rd overall. So I'm sure he might be a little bit disappointing, but that was still some very interesting racing we saw there.
I didn't even know that Kroll was there. He just appeared from
At first,
nowhere.
I thought that Engel had just overshot it. I thought he just went way too deep in the brakes going in there. I was like, what in the world is going on here? Did he forget to turn? Did he, like,
Yeah, I mean,
I understand it's a bit dark here, but
this
oh
might
my
be the
god.
move of the season, and it's only round 1. Look how slow they are. He did just go deep, didn't he?
Yeah,
But
Boots
Kroll
just went way too deep there. He was trying to get the move there for 31st overall and just overshot the brakes and has to pay dearly for it. Soren Kroll, he was probably about maybe a full second behind him going into that corner and manages to snag 32nd position. So I'm sure he's very happy after that turn of fortune at the final 2 corners.
Incredible stuff. I was waiting for a last corner move at the chicane, and I really didn't think it would be via that, because yeah, the gap between them heading in was absolutely huge. Well, let's have a look at the final standings, and I will rapidly go through these names as fast as I possibly can, because we've got a lot of drivers. Antonino Samarco won ahead of Kazuki Fujita and Anders Meyer. Carl Finkel was in 4th place, followed by Christian Biasetti, Matteo Colani, Taj Edwards and Marcus Gunzelman. Top of the Pro-Ams was Adam Starzinski ahead of Jack Wells and Christopher Otterholt on the podium. And it was Tommaso Montini. And then in the top of the AMS was David Vey. Behind him was Balash Turoshki, Matt Yestrum-Bakken, Stephen David, Roberto Castellozzi, Gordon Horg, Kieran Smart, Cesar Sebral, Alexander Skorett, Yannick Williams, finishing in 3rd place in the AMS. There's Liang Lao, Emmanuel Oliveri, Christopher Crook, Ketel Larson, Thomas Verm, Thomas Pugh, Daniel Dennison, Nick Yanni, Dirk Boutz, Soren Kroll, Dominic Engel, Arce Sorensen, Jeff Hancock, Simon Andre Livingston, Paul Joseph Clist, Thomas Asfaug, Jay Walsh, Colin Sampson, Thomas Burns, Stuart Wyness, Kim Andre Bjorkland, John Durgaris, D-Day de Blamnik, Eric Rosseth, Ethan Bass, PJ Clysons, Alex Bavens, and Timmy Nylander. We go, absolutely rapid stuff. And we've got some interviews to be had now. And first up, I would like to have a chat with, well, I think I'm going to drag up Anders Meyer, who joins us in the commentary box now. Anders, fantastic to have you back with us, of course, after your championship victory in the prototypes earlier on in the year. Congratulations, third position is a real nice way to start the season.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not. It could have been more. I feel like it could have been more. My quality wasn't the best. Was an AM car on my first attempt in the middle of Eau Rouge, and the final attempt we didn't get to finish, so it was a bit so-so. Had to make up some places, but yeah, P3 is good, but I just feel like I could have done more. But in the end, my rear tires were gone, so I didn't have anything to fight with. So yeah, the guys in front were really quick as well. So I don't know, but you always want to do better.
Talk us through the tyre strategy. You guys didn't seem to take tyres, yourself and Kazuki. Antonino did. Was that a temptation for you to take tyres?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was 20 minutes or so into the race, you could feel the rear starting to slip, especially in Pujon and I don't know what the right-hander is when you go out on the straight before Blanchimont, but that corner was really difficult for me. I don't know, it didn't seem like the guys in front had that much struggle through there, but I just seemed to lose the car a lot through there, so I really wanted to take rears, but I didn't know if it was a free rear tire stop or not, so I gambled and kept going with the tires I had.
Yeah, it would have been tight. I guess it's like 13 seconds, right? And I'm looking at your pit stop time, and it was 13 seconds. So it would have been, yeah, you may have lost like a tenth or two, but yeah, it would have pretty much matched your fuel, it looks like. In terms of, the GT3 cars, we've seen you in the Porsche Cup before. We've seen you in the prototypes. How are you finding these GT3 machinery? Do you have a whole lot of experience in them?
No, I began after the prototype championship. I started focusing a bit on GT3, and that was pretty much the first time I actually tried to spend time in it. I had a few races here and then, but not something I focused on. So I feel a lot more comfortable in the prototype and the Porsche Cup and F3s and different cars I've driven. I seem to struggle a bit with the GT3, but it's getting better and better. So and it's the cars that are really popular right now, so you just have to spend time on it, even though you might like other cars better.
Yeah, so we're very happy that you are taking part in the championship, Anders, and of course, at stake, you could potentially win your third championship in 3 different cars, which only one man has ever done in Apex Racing League history, so it would be very impressive if you could clinch it this season. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the guys in Racing Lab AM, because I've been sitting in the same room with them and talking through the race. Then they are improving so much so fast, so it's impressive to see. And I have to thank Racing Lab, CarX.no, KTM, and Mosa Racing, and of course to Apex for hosting these great leagues. Always fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having a chat with us, Anders, and yeah, best of luck next week.
Thank you.
Anders Meyer there, your third place finisher for Racing Lab Esports. Ron, who are you going to have a chat with next?
Well, when I was thinking after the race of who was the most impressive to me, one of the names that popped up on the list was David Vey, who we'll talk to right now. I will drag him in if I'm able to. Give me 1 second. He put on a mighty impressive performance. He managed to do very good in this race. David Vey, I'd like to talk to you, my friend. You put together a very composed drive there throughout that race. End up 13th overall, the top of the drivers in the AM category. How's the race from your end?
Honestly, I still can't believe that it went this good. Honestly, my qualifying was a bit interesting. I was unlucky on my first lap, and I caught up another Porsche, and it ruined my first lap. But with my second lap, I feel like it was really good, and I managed to get the first position in the M class. After that, in the race, I felt like that with a good qualifying position, I can have the top spot in the amateur class. And I just have to keep it clean. I almost kept it clean. I had some mistakes. I lost it 2 times, I think, and I've lost five positions maybe, but still with other people's mistakes, I managed to get that place.
I'll tell you what, you definitely impressed me tonight. That was a very composed drive, very clean drive. You did mention that you had a few mistakes here and there, but at a track like this where it's so challenging for the drivers and it's so challenging to keep it on the road for the most part, you can make a few mistakes here and there, but thankfully with how long these races are, it's not too harsh if you do make a mistake here and there. So one thing I was going to ask you, we saw a lot of drivers come into the pits for tires. I do believe you did you take tires? I believe you did. And if you did take tires, what tires did you take? Did you take all four? Did you take one side?
Obviously, I already know from my test race results and from my testing that my tire management wasn't the best, and I was pushing too hard sometimes, and mostly my rear tires were really worn after some laps, so I took all tires because I felt like it's better if I take tires than if I lose it because I didn't take.
I'll tell you what, we saw some very interesting strategy throughout this race, and we saw a very fantastic race. David, you put together a very good drive. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you can join us throughout the next few rounds of the season. Anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
Yes, I want to thank to my team. They were very supportive. Of course, my family, they were very supportive about to try this championship, and it looks like it's going pretty well, and I hope I can join some other time too.
Yeah, it definitely went pretty well for you. David Vey with the Fendi Racing team ends up 13th overall, the top of the amateur drivers. David, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That is your 13th overall runner, David Vey. It was very nice to hear from him, and we also have some more drivers that we'd like to hear from. I'll pass it back off to you, Sam.
Yeah, I think we'll have time for one more. It is a very long race, so we'll just have time for one more interview. I'm going to drag up Emmanuel Oliveira now, who joins us now. Emmanuel, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just first up, talk us through what happens on the formation app.
I said no, my wheel got disconnected, and I don't know why, but I crashed into the wall. Then I go to the pit. I start gain position. Then yeah, it was fast. I was making like the fastest lap for a bit. I was fast. Then I was making a bit of full saving, but it was fast. So yeah, it's not easy. So much unlucky, but yeah, it's good race. So much position gain at the end.
Yeah, it was a really good recovery from yourself because, yeah, we saw you down, 45th position, and then to see you up in the top 24 by the end was really impressive. When it comes to Spa this weekend, of course, you've got a lot of your esports racing team teammates in this race. Are you racing the 24 Hours of Spa with them this weekend?
Yeah, we make with my teammate.
Awesome. And how confident are you feeling about that event? Is it one that you enjoy?
I hope to make I hope my wheel will not disconnect in the formation laps. Yeah, but my teammate is faster, so we can make a good race. I think.
Awesome. Well, we wish you the best of luck for that one, Emmanuel. Is there anyone you'd like to give any thanks to, any shout outs to?
I want to say thanks to Samuel Spalletta, he's the team boss. So yeah, I want to say thanks for him for all the improving. Thanks for him. And so yeah, GA Sport and my teammate.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having a chat with us, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Emmanuel Oliveri there, finishing in 24th position, and in a way our highest gainer, because after lap 1 he was nowhere. He had fantastic pace run, and I'm sure will be strong for the rest of the season. But really, really entertaining first round of the championship, I think, their run, and we already knew going in, just by looking at the iRatings of all these drivers, that there wasn't going to be a runaway winner in any of our classes. And tonight has only reaffirmed that. We've got, I think, all our class victories, fairly close to one another.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could definitely say that Samarco was kind of the runaway star for the most part, because he led most of the laps, pretty much led from start to finish, minus a few laps here and there during the pit cycle. But still some very exciting racing. We saw some very intriguing strategy content throughout this race as well, obviously, with the pit stop that these drivers had to make for fuel, and we also saw for tires, which both of us weren't really expecting. We were expecting some of these drivers just to kind of stick with their start set tires, but they managed to put together a pretty good race. I was I was definitely on my seat for a lot of that. That was a very great start to the year, and I look forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, it should be really, really good. Of course, coming up pretty much every Tuesday for the next couple of months is this championship, so do make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to Apex Racing TV to see all the broadcasts, along with all the other broadcasts that we have on the channel as well, including the Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup, which is coming up tomorrow. We've also got our studio broadcast, the Apex Racing Academy Formula 3 Championship on Friday. Radicals obviously on Friday, and 3.5 and on some Saturdays. Spec Racer Ford, and yeah, loads of stuff on Apex Racing TV. So do make sure you subscribe to the channel and check out our social media pages as well on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where you can see the best moments from our races, along with some extra content as well. And of course, big thanks as well to SDK Gaming, to Apex Racing Academy, and to Virtual Racing School for supporting the championship. But for now, from myself, Sam Fitzpatrick, from Ron Mons, and from Samuli Kume, we are going to say goodbye, and we'll see you back next week for round 2 of the championship. See you then.